What is the secret to living a good life? I'm not going to pretend to know the answer to that. And I think we've been debating that probably as long as there's been humans and philosophers on this planet. But I'm going to do my best to share some of the thoughts I've had. And honestly, a lot of this is just reflections for myself. So questions that I asked on my own behalf that I'm going to share in this episode. Before we get into the amazing secrets of how to live a good life, let's do a little introduction housekeeping. This is the Catharsis Project. This is a company that I started. My name is Mino, and I'm the founder and creative director of the Catharsis Project, which is really at its core, in essence, just a vehicle for me to have fun and be creative and express artistically. That's the sole intention of this project. And I did the first episode last week, and now we're on episode number 2 here. I'm really just going based off of inspiration. What is it that comes to me that I'd like to talk about? In the first episode, I truly went off the top of my head. Today, I have 8 bullet points, my framework for how to live the best life, the most amazing life. I have 8 bullet points that I'll be elaborating from. So I have a little bit of preparation and planning here. And, I really enjoyed last week, and what I was reflecting on, and I don't know if there's such a big difference, is that over time, it'd be really cool if this actually evolved into almost like a radio show. That feels really cool to me. Something about a podcast still kind of skeeves me out. But I mean, this is essentially what I'm doing right now, is essentially podcasting. But if it could just somehow be a radio show, right? Play some cool music, hang out. I don't know how to do that with copyright laws, but something like that would be really cool. And I felt like sharing that. So, all right, let's get to the topic for today. Today, I've been really reflecting on, what does it mean to have a good life? I've actually, of course, been thinking about this for a very long time. And I've struggled to answer this question. And across my life, I have definitely struggled with different elements of the human existence. And I imagine I'm not alone in that. One of the things that I keep kind of thinking about is like, I wish I just had kind of like a list of things that, like a checklist, right? Of like, hey, just do this in this order and life will be so good, right? How do I simplify this really complex, crazy thing, this amorphous, crazy thing called life, into something that's simple? Part of my motivation is more akin to a Zen teaching. There's a couple, actually, that come to mind. The first is when asked the Zen master, what is life like before enlightenment? The Zen master answers, it's chopping wood and carrying water. And then the student asks, well, what is life like after enlightenment? And the Zen master responds, it's chopping wood and carrying water. So that's one kind of interpretation, right, of the meaning of life, right, is that we do our daily tasks, the quality we bring to them can be radically different, and that ultimately is one of the things that we can focus on in life. A second iteration, a kind of very similar version of that, is a student asked the Zen master, what is the meaning of life? And the Zen master answers, when hungry, eat. When tired, sleep. When cold, chop wood. There's something to be said about, again, the simplicity of and the quality that we bring to our life. And so what if really, for myself, really, I could come up with what is my, chop wood, carry water list that I would like to kind of work on. Part of this is motivated because I am now in my mid-30s and I feel myself shifting and changing considerably on a kind of psychological level. There's something happening within me. Something is shifting. And it's this weird sensation where I still feel really young. I feel energy in my body. I still feel potential. Like there's a lot of, that kind of feeling of like, I know I'm still relatively, it feels like in the beginning of life, but I also find myself kind of grieving for some of my youth and youthfulness, which is weird. And I don't know how to reconcile sometimes, like, how can I feel young, but I don't feel like I'm youthful, or what is this thing? And the sense I'm getting is that there's like different chapters, of course, in life. And one of the chapters is this kind of like adolescence, this very prolonged adolescence. I'm not talking about like teenage years, but I'm just talking about the way the brain kind of makes meaning of things and the things that are important to the brain and to the soul is this extended adolescence. I saw a BBC article that kind of confirmed and defined this for me a couple weeks ago that was saying like there's phase one of life is like 0 to about 9 years old, and that's really just like child, right, kid. And then from like 9 to about 33, 32, 33, I forget what it said, is the adolescent period. And then from like, let's say 33 to 66, something like that, or 30 to 66, I don't know, is the true adult years. And then after that, there's a period where you then have like a 66 to I think 80 or something like that, where you kind of go into retirement and you kind of transition out of societal roles. And then your final years are really just spent more in like contemplation and contentment, hopefully, of the life that you've lived. So I'm entering this adulthood period, and I notice like there's a lot of things inside me that are shifting. Things that used to make me happy or I enjoyed no longer do as much. Like I used to love traveling, adventuring, trying new things. And there's this natural shift that I'm like, every time I try to do that ritual like I used to when I was even just a few years younger, just doesn't feel that good or nice. Instead, there's like other desire for commitment, desire for orderliness, for structure. It's like a completely new version of me seems to be emerging during this period of life, which is, yeah, I don't know, very interesting to observe. And it comes with a lot of confusion and emotions and grieving. And did I already mention confusion? Like it's really just being lost in the sea of like, what the fuck is happening to me? One of the things that supported me tremendously in my life as I've been going through that adolescent period and doing the self work, right? The work on myself through a lot of therapy and different groups and different experiences I've had with meditation, like all these self-development experiences. Time and time again, what I've noticed, and now this is some of the work I bring in my day job when I'm consulting CEOs, consulting their companies, is one of the biggest shifts I find in people, in systems, is when we clarify roles. When we clarify roles. So, like in a family structure, we each have a role that we play. There's typically a mother and a father. Up until this point, biologically, that's what at least was needed. You needed a male and a female to procreate. And then you have children, right? You can be a son, a daughter, a sibling. Not saying this is the only constellation, this is the only configuration that can exist. I'm just saying in a biological kind of terminology, these are some of the kind of classifications that you might typically see, right? Okay. I'm not gonna go too far down that rabbit hole. So we have a role, right? And then we can start to ask like what is the responsibilities of that role? So when you shift into becoming a father, you're becoming a mother, there are certain responsibilities, amazing things, right? But also, and responsibility doesn't have to be heavy, but there's certain like, descriptions, job description that comes with that role. Of course, each person defines those roles and responsibilities differently. Each culture does. I'm not going to get into that. When we talk about work, we have roles. That one's a little bit more clear, right? Like you have a job that you go to, you have a function that you're performing. A lot of dysfunction in life and in human systems is when we don't know our roles. We don't understand what is our position in life. We don't understand our responsibility. We don't understand then how to interact with the people around us. There's tons of role confusion constantly. For instance, one of the role confusions, like let's say you're at work and someone makes like a sexual advance, right? Your primary role at work is a functional one. It's to do the job. But when you switch into that other relating system, you're now saying there's another role all of a sudden in the room with us. And that's where things get messy because all of a sudden it's like, am I talking to my coworker? Am I talking to someone hitting on me, a girlfriend, a lover? Like there's like a friend, like there's all these roles that we carry around with us. So the greatest clarity in life, I'm telling you, comes from defining what is the role I'm in this situation and what are the responsibilities of this role. This to me is very similar to the concept of dharma and karma in Hindu traditions, Buddhist traditions, and Sikhism. They define these all differently, right? But that's kind of if I've been reading the Bhagavad Gita the last couple of weeks. Is a lot of the discussion is around dharma and karma. Okay, this is a layman's, white man's attempt to re-explain these concepts, which is probably not my role in life, but I'm going to step into it hazardously anyways, right? So see, I'm going to play out my role, and maybe I get in trouble. Dharma, to the best of my understanding in this moment, is like, what are the roles that we have in this life? And there are many different types of dharma that we have in life. So many different types of roles that we occupy, depending on all the identities we hold, social, cultural, familial. But that's one thing, is like, let's figure out what is the right role for me and the right responsibilities for me. And then karma is the actions that we take, the consequences of the actions that we take. So if I perform my dharma correctly, right? If I know my role and I do it with non-attachment and great intention, then in theory, in essence, at least according to the Bhagavad Gita, we would not be producing karma. We won't be producing any ripple waves. Now, if we fuck this up, then we will create ripples in the systems around us. So we create waves and create kind of some chaos and dysfunction all around us. So part of what I've been asking myself is like, what are the roles that I'm emerging into in this season of life? And roles are constantly changing, but what are the roles that I would like to have in this season of life? What are the responsibilities I have? What are the actions I can take and want to take? And how do I take those actions in a way that doesn't screw things up for the people, for me and for the people around me, right? How do I make it so it's a little bit of a smooth transition? This is the thought that came to me. This is the thought experiment that I'm going to share with you that might be totally dumb. It could be the stupidest thing. And by the end of it, I'll share why it might actually just be the dumbest thing ever. But this is what helped me at least ask better questions. And I think when I can ask better questions, I can come up with better solutions. Again, I'm not pretending this is like important. This isn't the Bible. People have spent a lifetime thinking about this stuff. I spent like 2 days probably pondering this on and off. And this is where I arrived. The thought experiment I went through was, if we look at evolution, right? And we look at the major leaps in evolution, which, God, how do you even start to define that in a scientific way? I don't know. That's why this isn't a scientific podcast. If I look at the major leaps in how like matter, life, universe has evolved, are there certain lessons I can draw from myself about what roles and functions I have and what responsibilities I have? So I started like thinking about the Big Bang. That's how far back I'm gonna go. I'm being dead ass right now. I'm being serious. That is how far back I'm going, is Big Bang. I don't know what happened before the Big Bang. None of us know what happened before the Big Bang, but something emerged. It likely came out of something, unless the laws of thermodynamics don't exist, which I don't know. Maybe before the Big Bang they don't. But existence, this universe that we're in came into existence. So I said, okay, step one, if you are a part of the universe, this is the rungs on the ladder we're going to go on, right? This is the human ladder that we're going to go on. Rung one is just existence. Like, we are energy and matter, and we can only be transformed. And that is a law of physics, right? Matter cannot be created or destroyed, just transformed. So it's very basic. Rung one, the first role I'll talk about is just beingness. It's just being a part of the universe. All of the cells are made up of atoms. Those atoms are made up of different parts of the universe. So we're not separate from the universe. We're not separate from existence. We are existence. That is one of our roles, is just existing. That's, you can die, I can die. It's not going to change that. So you can't escape that. On the flip side, it's like when you're playing bingo and there's the free space in the middle. There's no real like responsibility with this one, other than just you are. Nothing you do, say, do, think can ever change this. The material form can change, right? Of course, I can become ash. I can become carbon, but that doesn't change the fact that the components of who I am still exist in some form. So that's the first rung on the ladder, is like, we're always going to be here in some way, shape, or form until the universe ceases to exist. And yeah, I'm not going to be around for that, I don't think. All right, so it's the first rung on our ladder of kind of roles and responsibilities. Great, we got like a little bonus. We don't have to really do much there. The second one is like, all right, so all this matter was created, all this energy was like floating around, and it's kind of coalescing into matter in the universe. And at some point, it gets denser, starts flying around, smashing into each other, and matter like starts to kind of really coalesce in pockets of the universe and starts to form stars and rocks and planets and moons. And so the second rung of the ladder is the earth, the physical earth that human beings occupy, exists and is a vital, vital part of being human. We'll see if Elon and Jeff Bezos can alter that. But for the time being, there's no humans without earth. And it is earth from which we came. So I would say for me, the second, big step here is the creation of the planet and things like water, like terrain, right? Humans were terrestrials and we need water, we need oxygen. So there's all these things that the environment provides for us. Very important. So the earth is there. This is where I believe our responsibility starts, because without the earth and without the natural resources, we go away. We cannot exist without the earth in this moment in time. So I think there's some responsibilities here. When I think of myself as like I'm a terrestrial being, right? I'm someone that needs the planet and I want to have some reciprocity with the planet, then what comes to me is like, one, damn sure I'm grateful to the planet. So that seems like one of the responsibilities I take away of this role of occupying the earth is I'm very, very grateful that these building blocks of life are all around me. So it would be pretty damn good if I woke up every day with a little bit of gratitude for the planet all around me. Then there is this thing about respect. So how do I respect the planet? How do I stay in reciprocity with the planet? It's like, on one hand, it can be self-interest, because if we fuck up the planet, which we're kind of doing right now, obviously, then we go away. But there's something beyond self-interest here that I would like and hope to highlight, which is I do think part of the role of being a terrestrial is to respect gifts. Like, it's like, unless you're really selfish and entitled, if you were given a gift, you would respect the person and acknowledge them and be grateful to them. And with reciprocity, you'd pay them back for that. So I would suggest that that's another kind of core responsibility of being a terrestrial, being a child of the earth. So we have two responsibilities now. We're starting, right? With existence, we got off scot-free because you can just keep existing no matter what, unless you break the laws of physics. With the earth, I do think comes some stewardship, gratitude, respect, reciprocity. All right, we got our first kind of like rung on the ladder where we probably need to do something. Although, to be fair, I don't think this is such a high demand, which is to wake up and have a little bit of gratitude and to just try to leave this place the same or better than we found it. So yeah, I would avoid dumping chemicals in the rivers and littering and destroying everything around us. Okay. So we have the planet, right? The next big shift, rung 3 on the ladder, is life. Life emerges. Could have been an asteroid or a meteor that brought the raw elements of life to the planet. But somehow the raw elements ended up here and they ended up having a chemical reaction and life began. I had to look this up because I'm starting to notice that when I learned things in school as a kid, we're already at the point where it's outdated. And like, for instance, I found out a few months ago, like the classification systems in biology have totally changed, I think, since I was a kid. So I was saying like random stuff and I'm like, damn, like that's just not even, that's not what the kids learn anymore. And I don't have children, so I don't know what the kids are learning. But I stumbled on that fact. And I think I had a similar thing about how do we define life. And I think since I was in school growing up, I think they've changed or altered or tweaked the definition of life. But somewhere life came into existence and we are part of life. So life has like 6 criteria. Should I go through them? I don't know if it's that important, but it's things like homeostasis, right? Like we are able to have a self-correcting internal system. So if you get hot, you sweat. Let's see. Metabolism. So we're able to transform energy. That one's pretty important. We respond to stimuli at a population level. We reproduce. We're able to evolve, right? And so we're able to have this natural selection. So we are alive. And for me, the key responsibility when I think about, for me, when I think of, okay, what is my role in life? On one level, it could be to have children. I don't know yet, to be honest. That's one of the elements That's one of the roles we have to decide on some level, is if we would like to be parents and bring life forward. I don't know. So that's one of the things I need to ask myself. Is that something that's important to me? And is it my role? I don't even know if it's important or not important. It doesn't even matter. Is it my role in this life to carry on life in that way? Of course, I'm very grateful because there's a lot of things in my body that the body does automatically to keep me alive and to maintain homeostasis. For me, the key responsibility when it comes to life is gratitude. Gratitude. Grateful to be here. Grateful to be a part of this experience, as harsh or tough as it can be at times. But I think that's the primary responsibility I take away from that role of being a life form, is gratitude to be here, and possibly a role of reproduction, sex, having kids. Okay. In a very biological way. I'm not talking about the relational side of sex right now. I'm just talking about the biology of sex. So this is where we're at in the kind of rung of the ladder. And then we move forward. And as life developed, our bodies developed and became much more complex. And we developed a lot of organ systems. One of the things I was curious about today is actually our senses have evolved. If you look at the history of evolution, our senses have evolved at different rates, which is kind of interesting. So, one of the first senses that evolved in us is our ability to set our own direction, like physically in mobility. So, it's like mobility, right? And our ability to direct ourselves, which I never thought about before, but I'm like, yeah, that's pretty cool. So, having a sense of my limbs, right? And being able to direct myself, that's pretty neat. That's pretty fucking cool. So that was one of the first senses that actually developed. Then taste seems to be one of the primary senses that developed, so that we could detect essentially different chemicals in the environment. Sight came next. So the sensitivity to light and developing our sight. We had to then, as organisms, move on to land. And after moving on to land, we then developed smell. So being able to detect chemicals in the air. And finally, the last sense to develop, it seems, is hearing, our ability to hear sound. So to detect vibrations in the air. That was just kind of cool. I just wanted to share that because I thought that was a neat kind of part. But our body, as it develops, there are certain responsibilities we do have to our body. Where our body is where our life is. So without the body, there is no life for us. And so the body does have requirements. And this is one of the areas that I've probably neglected the most in my life, is the physical necessities of the body. I override it to do other things, which I'm learning to kind of get away from, try and then reprioritize. But this is when you always hear like, health comes first, health comes first. Yeah, probably. It probably should. So what are the responsibilities to the body? At a very minimalistic level, there's the core things like sleep. Seems to be one of the most important and vital parts of taking care of the body. Movement seems to be one of the most important parts of the physical part of the body. So exercise, eating nutritious food, getting nutrients, and eating enough to do the biological functions of the body with that water, right? Hydration. So nutrition, hydration. And then, of course, we could talk about like the quality of like air, breathing, but really focusing, I think, on those core three. And I would include here hygiene. So personal hygiene, taking care of cleanliness of the body, I think is super important. So those are the core four, right? Things that I would highlight here. So in terms of responsibilities, if I just go through my own, again, recap is gratitude and respect to the planet, gratitude for life, sleeping, moving, eating well, cleaning myself, hygiene. Those seem to be kind of some pretty core needs. Then as we kind of develop further, I would say we've gotten better and more advanced throughout the course of evolution at kind of developing survival systems. So threat detection, survival. And this is where I kind of pair like stress and survival. So our ability to protect ourselves comes in this space, physically creating boundaries, protection, stress, regulating that stress, having an accurate, to the best of our ability, threat detection, right? So not like seeing threats where they don't exist. So when we're overly stressed, we start to see threats where they don't necessarily exist. This is a kind of core component. So in this is where I would start to put in things like needing shelter, needing protection, a physical capability to like defend oneself, having boundaries, and regulating our stress response. So not being chronically in like a fight, flight, and freeze state. So this is where things start to get a little bit more complex, right? Because the other ones, like generally speaking, especially if we weren't in like an urban environment or suburban environment, like the other ones, like kind of take care of themselves other than food. Like generally speaking, humans always slept. They were moving because they had to move to be able to play and work and live. They always were generally near water sources and stayed near water sources. So big thing here is though food, big one for a lot of human history. And then this like threat detection, which can come from all the different threats. It could be like earth slides and earthquakes, which are hard to predict. Then there's like other animals that could be a threat to us. But often the most dangerous thing to humans is other humans. So this is where we develop this kind of nervous system response that I think we need to work on and regulate. The next rung on the ladder is, and this is where a lot more complexity starts, is around our social roles. So then we develop the kind of more mammalian, mammals, primates, very complex social structures. And this is where I really would like to emphasize that it's really for us to clarify what is our role in these social structures. For instance, I put work here. So work to me is contribution to the collective, contribution to society. To be a part of a give and take, we need to be giving to the society so that we can also receive from the society. So this is a vital kind of element here, is defining what is a meaningful contribution to society. I think in a lot of Western society, we look at this very backwards, which is what do I like? What is my passion? What's meaningful to me? Instead of what's meaningful to the others. What do the others need? And how do you support and serve the others in life? I think there's a lot of failed startups because we go into what do I want to do versus like what's actually going to solve someone's problem. And there's a lot of this, lot of tension around the work we do and the meaningfulness of the work. And so there's a big kind of clusterfuck that needs to be unwound is what is my role in contributing to society? There's like, what is my role in a family system? And we often get that really messed up, which is probably why there's such a need for therapy and therapeutic tools to sort out what is my role in my family and not getting things tangled up and taking the wrong role. There's roles in friendship and community. Like there's all kinds of roles that we don't really consciously sit down and define. And this is where, when I said it's good to be able to ask the right questions, I think this is one of the most complex facets of life. So we have yet to really master this. Part of the difficulties are society and technology change. So our roles change, family units change, culture change. So it's like, it's hard to say, okay, it's this thing frozen in sand. You know, sometimes you need more of one role than another role. So it's fluctuating. But if we can sit down and figure this part out, so this is where I think we've kind of failed at the primate level. Like we're still sorting out a lot of primate issues. Yeah, we haven't mastered this one. So I think we have a lot of problems and issues at this one. But in this point in my life, again, if I turn it to me, I will say that on a work level, because I've started my own company, I have created a role, and it's a role that I contribute to the society. And one of the metrics of that is that I receive money in return for the labor I do. So the society says that what I'm doing is important enough for them to trade their resources with me. So I do feel both qualitatively and quantitatively that I am contributing to the society. And I like the role because I created it myself and I made it fit fully to me. So on a work level, I feel quite good about the role that I occupy. On a social system level, generally speaking, I'm overall kind of happy with where I'm at. I don't have any conflicts with anyone right now. I have zero conflicts in this season of life. I know it's not static. It's not going to stay this way, but I have zero conflicts in my life with my family, with my friends. I do ask myself constantly if I could redefine What does a good friend look like? What does a good son look like? What does a good brother look like? And I don't have great answers for that. But this is again where if we can ask the right question, then we can maybe get to a great answer. One thing that, of course, I have a very simplified life when it comes to my social relating is I do not have a spouse in this moment. I don't have a significant other. I don't have children. Those automatically add a lot more complexity to our social web and our social network. And under this is like a lot of skills that we need to build, right? Around healthy communication, healthy cooperation, clarity around roles. So there's like all kinds of like very important, vital, emotional intelligence skills that come from this rung on the ladder. So I would suggest that, yeah, this is a big one that we probably spend a lot of our time trying to sort out in our life. If we go to the next rung of the ladder, if we could go even beyond the primate life, right, into like, what does it really mean to be human? I think are the final two attributes that kind of really separate us as humans. I don't think necessarily just human, but I think we have we're different when it comes to these two than other animals, in my humble opinion. The first of the two, so this is rung 7 of 8. So rung 7 of 8 is that we create culture and we create technology. My shorthand for this is like we like to do arts and crafts, but we like to do arts and crafts at a level that is impacting the whole tribe. It's not arts and crafts just for me, myself, and I. It's like our arts and crafts actually really change the direction of everyone. Technology. Yeah, we make new tools. We relate to our tools. We feel like our tools are an extension of ourselves. So I do think part of the journey here in defining our role is actually understanding our role relative to different tools and technology. So this is like where I, even in this exercise, have learned something, which is, sometimes when I hear people talking about AI, I shouldn't be like, shut up, shut up, shut up. There's so much more to life than talking about AI and debating AI. And there's just so much mental masturbation. I'm like, just shut the fuck up. And then I did this exercise and I'm like, you know what? Actually, the way we relate to our tools and the way that tools and culture are kind of woven together is actually really important. So maybe it is good that we're all talking about AI and technology. And maybe I'm in the wrong there, actually. It's something I realized from this reflection. Culture, I think I would actually break this down to a lot of human culture is built by storytelling. It is something that I think we're quite unique in doing is we can tell stories, have abstract thinking, have symbols, we give meaning to things that are abstract. Like storytelling is one of the most potent human technologies we have because it organizes us and we can form collective identities. Like a lot of the identities we hold are a story. So me living in the United States, being a US citizen is a story. It's not like a fact of biological fact. It's something that someone told me, and then and told me a story about America, and then I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I'm American. And there's a story that then I'm like, oh, it's me, right? I am the story somehow. This is where I think there's, when it comes to our roles and responsibilities, I think there is a role for us to figure out our relationship with technology. There's a role about storytelling, consuming and telling stories. And this is where I'd like to like somehow for me, I want to consume stories responsibly because stories are very potent. They can kind of hijack the system. So how do I hear stories from others in a responsible way? So that's one of the kind of key responsibilities, or not get hooked into stories or believe stories are facts, right? I think that's kind of a very core requirement as it comes to the kind of roles as culture makers. But I think kind of like the arts and crafts is important. It's actually super important. So somewhere in our life, and that's where like probably the role of hobbies, like somewhere that role and responsibility is actually really needed. Culture making, tool making, craftsmanship. The eighth and final rung on the ladder is awareness. Awareness. So part of the human ability is that we can step back, observe, and become the witness without judgment, without attachment, a state that is often associated with meditation. Meditation is just a tool, right? Just a way to get there. But I think this is one of the ultimate kind of roles and responsibilities, is that we are a witness to everything that's happening inside and outside of us. So those are the 8 steps of the ladder. Why is it a ladder? Well, part of it we could say is a chronological kind of order, the time, right? From the beginning of time till now in terms of evolution. But I do think there's also a level of prioritization that's really needed. Like, we have to respect the order of things, and that there's a priority to how things evolved, and respecting the order in which things happened. For instance, rung 2 of the ladder is Earth. If there's no Earth, there's no life. So rung 3 cannot exist without rung 2. Without life, we don't have a chance of developing a body. Without a body, we don't have a chance for survival and threat mechanisms. Without our ability to detect survival and threat and keep ourselves alive and protected, hard, I believe, to develop complex social structures. Without complex social structures, very hard to impossible to develop arts and crafts and kind of this mass-produced culture and technology making that we do. And then awareness is a bit of the joker card. It's a bit of the wild card, because I think awareness can be paired with all of these, and all of these are enhanced by awareness. I don't think you have to go in chronological order to get to awareness in terms of the life we live today, coming in as a fully formed human being. So that's a bit of the joker. I think you could put that anywhere in the deck. But generally speaking, I think it's good to know the order of things, because I believe it's good to prioritize. Now, in reality, we're doing all 8 of these things all at once, all the time. They all interact with each other. They all push pull on each other. That's the conflict we feel in life, right? If life was just one rung on the ladder, you could just do that one rung on the ladder over and over again, and everything would be gravy. The reality is all of these 8 are pushing and pulling on each other constantly. And that is why human life is complicated. It is why it's complex, and our life is super complex, because we're juggling 8. I mean, because one of them is a free space, 7, 7 different responsibilities that we have. So for now, I'm calling this the human responsibility ladder. And, I think crisis, when we go to crisis has a very interesting way of clarifying what's important in life. So if you're sick, you're going to drop everything to tend to your health, right? I was sick last week. And what did I do? I dropped everything. I dropped work. I dropped relationships. I wasn't making arts and crafts. I wasn't going to the gym. I was just like, fuck, I really got to take care of recovering. I was just sleeping. So I kind of just focused on that part of the ladder. So I know people distort this all the time, including myself, right? We prioritize things that are higher up on the ladder. And my suggestion, especially to myself, is that every time I do that, I kind of fuck things up. If I'm not taking care of lower kind of order things on this ladder, then things aren't going well. If my heart were to stop, if my breathing were to stop, it doesn't matter how much I'm meditating and being aware. It's not going to matter that much. If, like I said, I'm sick, doesn't really matter. My arts and crafts. If I'm in a survival situation and I'm under threat, it's not going to really matter, what my social role most likely is in that moment. And there are caveats to this, right? Like, there are a lot of times that we allow our role to supersede other things on the ladder. So like a parent may sacrifice themselves on multiple different layers and levels of this to protect their child. That's, something we would say is admirable. A soldier might go and kill. I don't know if that's admirable or not. The point is not necessarily like life should always come before a role. Maybe sometimes the role does take precedence. But I'd kind of ask, again, this is where I'm like, maybe it's a good question, is what if life did come first just for a moment? What would this role look like if we did prioritize life? So what does war look like if we actually said life is more important than social roles, survival systems, arts and crafts? If we really placed life as the most important, I think about Earth a lot. What if we really placed Earth as the core priority before doing anything else in life? The reciprocity with the planet. which sustains us and keeps us alive. What would happen if we did that? If it just kind of altered our decision making to say, look, sometimes we might need to do something that breaks this kind of reciprocity rule. We're going to do something we know is probably going to have some negative impacts, and we'll deal with them. But generally speaking, we are trying to place this priority first. We haven't done that probably the last 100, 200 years. I would say we have really fucked up the prioritization of these rungs on the ladder. And then there's always a consequence to that. When you put the system out of balance, out of order, there's going to be a consequence and a crisis that comes to kind of put the system back in an order. That is homeostasis. That is earth. That is life. That is being in existence. The universe has laws that we cannot break. So the more actually you go down the rungs of the ladder, the more you get into like facts and laws and things that shouldn't be bent, and then things that might be bent. And then by the time you get to the top, it's like a lot more malleable and flexible. One of the things that I was thinking about, which is kind of crazy, so take it with a grain of salt if you're listening to this, which is, what if we really tried to master from the bottom, each rung of the ladder, and then we didn't like take people too seriously if they were trying to do a higher rung activity until they had mastered the bottom rungs of the ladder. So what do I mean by that? There's a lot of people who do like arts and crafts, right? They're doing culture and technology, and their life is a total shit show, right? They failed on like they're destroying the planet, they're destroying their bodies. They're constantly in threat mode, or not feeling safe. They like are horrible to the people around them. And then these are the people we put in the roles and the positions to run our media, tell our stories, craft new technology. And I'm like, so if there's a curriculum in life and they failed the first like 5 chapters, 5 units of the curriculum, why are we giving them the 6th chapter? Why should they be the ones to run it and be the ones that mass produce it? I think we can all do arts and crafts, right? Like that's a core part of being human and it's an important part. But like, why are we elevating these like anti-life, I guess? I don't know what to call it. Like people who want to break the laws of physics. Why am I putting these people in charge of one of the most important parts of being human? That doesn't seem like that smart to me. So like even like me doing this video right now, like I'm not doing so great on like the physical health, right? I think I'm probably pretty good with like earth, life, survival systems. I'm doing great. Social roles right now, I'm doing great. But like I'm not in like the best place with my body and my health. And part of me is like, fuck, instead of making this video, I probably should have gone to the gym today. And if you're listening to this, maybe you shouldn't listen to this until I go to the gym and like that I'm eating well. And another thing I'll say is like none of this is about an outcome. It's not about hitting a certain goal, but it's about practicing the actions. Remember, I started with chopping wood and carrying water. So if someone is not having kind of respect and gratitude, if someone is not taking care of themselves, trying to take care of themselves, right, and doing the actions of self-care, if someone is not kind of regulating their nervous system and protecting themselves, if someone's not having good relationships and contribute to society, why in the fuck would I ask them to mass produce media? And why would I listen to them? That's crazy. Why would I ask them to mass produce tools and technologies and inject it into society? That's crazy. So this is like one of the things that I'm like questioning after this exercise. Do your arts and crafts, but maybe, prioritize the other parts of the ladder before sharing and scaling it to everyone. Yeah, this is another moment where I'm like, there's some celebrities that get shit on, right? Because they're like mean, they have bad relationships. And I was always like, is it like that important? Like that Ellen, okay, Ellen is mean to people. Is that like enough to cancel someone? Or like I saw today someone was like bitching about Frank Sinatra and like Frank Sinatra is not like didn't have good relationships with people. I'm like, is that enough to like cancel someone? And now I'm like, actually, maybe I don't want to hear or listen to people if they're not actually in integrity in other parts of their life. I don't know. That's an interesting thought experiment. Again, this isn't rules. This isn't the Bible. It's just like, I'm just playing here, right? And yeah, I'm just playing around. So for me, the benefit of all this is to kind of come away with a little bit of that checklist, a little bit of that to-do list of saying like, cool, So I'm going to have some gratitude, respect for the planet. I'm going to have gratitude for fucking being alive every day. I'm going to take care of myself physically. I am going to make sure that I'm regulating my nervous system. I am going to, I've clarified my role at work. So I'm going to just do my work and contribute to society. I have good relationships. So I'm going to continue maintaining good relationships with my family and friends. As I get more capacity, maybe I might add to the complexity by also having a significant other, or maybe one day, maybe kids. I don't know. That's the biggest question mark in all this. And then like with time, like, I don't know, I'm doing my arts and crafts and I contribute in my arts and crafts in my own way. And yeah, I'm having fun. And then awareness. I love awareness. Without awareness, I couldn't do all these things. Awareness is dope. So continuing meditation, continuing to be the witness, continuing to be the observer is beautiful. All right. The last thing I wanted to share on this is basically how stupid this whole exercise is. If you're listening to this, you might be like, well, Mino, isn't this just Maslow's hierarchy of needs? And after finishing this whole exercise for like 2 days, I was like, huh, did I basically just reinvent Maslow's hierarchy of needs? And on some level, I'm like, yeah, kind of. I have different names for things, but I think I've reordered some things and added a couple rungs on the ladder. Maslow doesn't start with the Big Bang. Maslow, to my knowledge, doesn't talk about Earth and ecology, which I think is really important. He doesn't really talk about having like gratitude for life, right? So he starts at kind of like rung 4 of the ladder, which is taking care of like physical needs, safety needs. And then he goes into first relationships, and then he separates out esteem, which a lot of esteem I think is a proxy for work, because it's like recognition, appreciation, achievement. And then he talks about self-actualization, which I'm not sure if it's the best proxy for awareness, but it's one of them. I don't think he includes anything around the culture, technology, the arts and crafts. Maybe that's actually self-actualization, and awareness is even above that. But yeah, on some level, it's like very similar to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So I probably could have just started there instead of doing this whole fucking exercise. But I enjoyed myself. I had fun. And you asked me like, so why did you do this? And I say, because it's arts and crafts for me. This is my arts and crafts. This is, me doing rung 7 on the ladder. This is my role in this moment, is to do this. So that's my guide to my secret guide to living a great life, is basically Maslow plus some gratitude and respect for the planet, and awareness and some meditation. So those are the things I'd probably, I guess, add to Maslow. And I appreciate the work that he's done. And yeah, so that's the episode for today. I'll leave it there. Bye-bye.